Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to discuss my thoughts on Destiny 2's new Checkmate mode, why it's the most fun I've had playing PvP in over 2 years, and provide some feedback for Bungie on how it might be carried forward in the future. Before we get into the meat of the video, I already know what a lot of you are thinking. Destiny 2 PvP is a joke. And you know what? You're absolutely right. Even the most die-hard D2 fans will admit that the game's player versus player experience is a shell of what it used to be, back in the golden days of the Taken King and Forsaken, myself included. Compared to the likes of Valorant, Call of Duty, or even Halo Infinite, which has come quite a long way since launch I might add, Destiny 2's PvP is a meme, and deep down, we all know that, even if it's painful to admit. That being said, myself, and many others, still cling to it for one reason or another. Maybe it's the sunk cost of investing thousands upon thousands of hours into the title, or the fact that no other FPS can get our neurons firing the same way Bungie's gunplay does. Or, you remember all of the fun you used to have playing PvP back in the good old days, and you hop on just for the chance to experience that same euphoric feeling again. I'm not addicted at all, right? Whatever the reason, there are still people out there who enjoy Destiny 2 PvP, and we have to take whatever scraps of content we can get in the face of Bungie's near-total apathy towards that part of the game since 2018. And, in the case of Checkmate, they've thrown us a bone that's actually worth chewing on. For those not already plugged into the Destiny 2 discourse, you're probably wondering what this Checkmate thing I keep mentioning is. Checkmate is a new PvP modifier designed to bring primary weapon gunfights to the forefront, while toning down the game's extremely potent abilities, while also increasing player health pools and updating the special ammo economy. All of these changes were combined to encourage longer combat encounters that reward skill and consistency, according to Bungie. To try and put it into non-Destiny layman's terms, the modifier was designed to tone back the frequency of abilities like grenades and healing, extend the base time to kill for all primary weapons, reduce the frequency of special weapon usage, synonymous with power weapons in Halo, and refocus PvP around actually shooting your weapons instead of spamming brain-dead abilities or sliding into every encounter with a shotgun. One of the biggest criticisms from PvP diehards over the last several years, in particular since the Witch Queen expansion released in 2022 and began introducing even more ability spam, is the frequency with which these abilities can be used and their potency to alter the outcome of each combat encounter. When you prime an enemy with a grenade or ranged melee, then deploy healing or an overshield during almost every gunfight, the importance of using your weapons effectively, what should be the focus of any PvP experience, is heavily negated. And in the case of Destiny 2, where gunplay feels so good, this eroded its core PvP experience to the point where it became almost unrecognizable to what attracted so many dedicated fans in the first place. With Checkmate, Bungie sought to right these wrongs, and I'm happy to report that they've done exactly that. To be honest, I wasn't really sure what to expect when hopping into Checkmate for the first time. Despite its many ups and downs over the years, the feel of Destiny 2 PvP, its base time to kill in particular, has always remained largely unchanged. I fully expected Checkmate's beefy health pools to feel jarring, and they certainly did for my first few matches. Weapons like hand cannons could still take out enemies in 3 shots, but pretty much every other archetype, auto rifles, pulses, submachine guns, although still very powerful, all took noticeably longer to bring down opponents, which meant the core purpose of the modifier was working as intended. After 4 or 5 games, I was able to align my in-game brain with the modifier's new parameters, and in no time this extended TTK felt like perfection. The focus on outdueling your opponents, being rewarded for maintaining accuracy while also disrupting theirs when possible, offered a welcome refinement of D2's existing PvP experience, while also enhancing it beyond its baseline skill ceiling. Although almost anyone who's played D2 would agree its gunplay feels fantastic, a large part of that stems from a heavy weighting towards mechanics like aim assist and bullet magnetism, both on controller and mouse and keyboard. Those functions are still present, but this higher TTK requires even more input from the player to make full use of them. And I quickly found out just how easily you'd be punished for not keeping up with opponents whose aim is better than yours. It sounds ridiculous to say, but in a way, I had almost forgotten how to truly focus on my primary weapon gunplay. When you have a toolkit that includes one-hit kill special weapons with ammo that can be extended almost indefinitely, a swath of potent abilities with extremely quick cooldowns, and certain playstyles that exploit overpowered weapons or broken mechanics, using your most basic primary weapons is often overlooked. I struggled to recall how it felt to not initiate each engagement by deploying an ability, and during my first few games I often found myself spamming one of my 3 keybinds and waiting for a grenade or barricade to materialize before realizing, oh, they're still on cooldown. It felt so refreshing to not duel titans constantly peeking out from behind a barricade, or have to give up map control of an entire area to a warlock sitting in their healing rift. Adjustments to the special weapon economy were also clearly felt. In my first few games, I'd often identify an approaching enemy, push up and slide around a corner, only to realize I hadn't acquired the corresponding ammo yet, and promptly be cut down by the enemy waiting for me. Special ammo being so limited felt miles better than vanilla PvP's current ammo loop, and once again reinforced the importance of skillful primary gunplay. Checkmate forces you to prioritize your special weapon usage or be punished by wasting it. Whiffing your sniper rifle shots feels much worse after realizing you don't have 2 more bullets already loaded the next time you spawn back into the action. As I spent more time playing Checkmate, I was reminded of the last time Destiny 2's PvP felt truly healthy, all the way back in Season of the Lost. Season 15 was a weird one, being Destiny 2's longest season ever, running from August 2021 to February 2022. But, despite the drawn-out period, it also featured some of the game's best content ever, like the 30th anniversary event. In addition to a solid output for PvE players, it was also the last time I truly enjoyed playing PvP on a consistent basis. Season of the Lost and the 30th anniversary combined to provide powerful weapons to chase, like the BXR Battler and Wastelander shotgun, which are 2 of my favorite guns to this day, along with a relatively balanced sandbox, at least by Destiny 2's standards. Outside of a few outliers, looking at you, Lorentz Driver, there was a wide array of viable weapons in the meta, along with tuning that brought most of the game's abilities largely in line with what many players would recognize as balanced. Nearly every weekend, I would boot up D2 right after work on Friday afternoons, queue into Trials as a solo, and punch my ticket to the Lighthouse on my very first card, enjoying nearly every game I played along the way. It wasn't just rewarding in terms of loot, it was fun. Trials, Quick Play, Iron Banner, I could hop into any game mode on any given day and play for hours without getting tilted or feeling like my time was being wasted. And man, that was a great feeling. Those 6 months were one of my favorite periods of D2, and they felt like the experience PvP players deserved after suffering through stasis and its broken abilities for 6 months after the launch of Beyond Light. Unfortunately, with the Witch Queen expansion, we kicked off another year of PvP being dominated by abilities. For my non-Destiny viewers, this started a cycle where a portion of the game's classes each had their abilities reworked, often to the point of being completely overpowered and dominating the meta until another class got its time in the spotlight. It felt like we had taken 10 steps back since stasis had been nerfed, only this time, the sandbox was broken for the better part of a year. It largely killed off my desire to spend any significant time playing the game, and by the end of the Witch Queen I had completely checked out. This was also a large part of my decision not to purchase the next expansion, Lightfall, which I still haven't picked up to this day. This is all a very long-winded way of saying the biggest reason I love Checkmate is because it's the first time since Season 15 that I've enjoyed PvP enough to play it for the sake of playing. When you aren't being hit with the melee or stonewalled by a healing ability every 5 seconds, you get to focus on where Destiny 2 truly shines. It's gunplay. Despite how much I'm enjoying the mode, it isn't perfect, and Bungie could stand to make a few changes in order to unlock its full potential. The biggest issue I noticed while playing Checkmate was an annoying tendency for teams to snowball. Hard. I'm not just talking about pre-made stacks of players either. At times, it seemed like entire teams of randoms would handhold each other throughout an entire match, making one-on-one engagements all but impossible. This often devolved into a cycle of 2 teams chasing each other around the map until one group wiped out the other, then running around holding hands until the next engagement. From a strategic perspective, it makes perfect sense. With a higher health pool, team shooting becomes even more valuable, as defeating multiple enemies on your own, while not impossible, becomes much more difficult. I'm honestly not sure how Bungie might resolve this. Maybe slightly decreasing each player's health pool could help, but then they run the risk of bringing Checkmate too close to the game's base TTK. It's a tough nut to crack, and is somewhat reminiscent of the team shooting days back in Vanilla D2, which should be avoided at all costs. But we also didn't have special weapons back then, so the problem isn't nearly as pervasive. Another area that could use some tweaking is weapon balance, for bows and hand cannons in particular. It's hard to tweak something that's always been a 3-shot kill in a mode where every other weapon now has a longer TTK, but not doing anything creates a risk that the mode will become dominated by hand cannons, which, as much as I love using them, isn't something I want to see. Variety is the spice of life, and the more weapons that are viable, the healthier the mode will be. Bows are another pain point, but this isn't necessarily a Checkmate issue as much as a balancing them as a whole issue. I've never been a huge fan of bows in PvP, as they tend to be extremely oppressive with little skill required. And I'm not even talking about the really annoying ones like Le Monarch. They've been due for some serious readjustment, and I hope Bungie takes that feedback to heart. While Checkmate's special ammo economy seems to be functioning well, heavy ammo has unfortunately not enjoyed the same balance. It still spawns too frequently, and similar to bows, this is a problem across PvP in general, but the same applies here. 2 other minor areas that could use some improvement are the current score limit and spawn logic. I'm not sure why Bungie felt reducing the score cap was a good idea, but it quickly became clear this wasn't the move and should be adjusted to allow for longer games. More time spent clicking heads and less time spent waiting to find a new match, please. Spawns are another part of the larger game that need tweaking, and Bungie has repeatedly stated they are working to improve them, so we'll just have to wait and see how that all turns out. For any of my D2 fans watching, I know what you're thinking, and I'm getting there. Pretty much all of the complaints I spoke on have been addressed in one way or another, and it's great to see the speed in which feedback has been absorbed since the mode's release. Bungie has already rolled out an update to nerf hand cannons and bows, with reductions to heavy ammo spawn frequency and an increase to the score limit already in the pipeline. It's nice to see recommendations from the community being taken to heart and corresponding changes pushed out so quickly, and I gotta give Bungie credit on that account. By this point, it's pretty clear that I think Checkmate is good. Great even. So the real question becomes, how should it be handled moving forward? Should this modifier become the baseline for all of PvP from here on out? Well, as much as I do enjoy it, the answer to that question is no. At least not entirely. While I do think Checkmate is a great addition to Destiny 2, there's something to be said for the feel of the game that we've come to know and love over the years. Some things just feel right. 3-tapping someone with a hand cannon, for instance, and are so integral to the core PvP experience that changing them up would just feel wrong. For all of its faults, of which there are many, the vanilla PvP experience is what made me truly fall in love with Destiny 1 and 2, and I don't want to see that replaced by something different, no matter how much of an improvement it might be over what's on offer right now. I'm a bit conflicted on how Checkmate would fit as the baseline for Trials of Osiris. Granted, I haven't touched the game mode in nearly a year, but it's shifted so far from being the epitome of competitive PvP to more of an endgame grind that anyone can partake in, if they have the stomach for it. And as much as I might hate some of the design decisions and balancing Bungie has made, keeping the mode a more freeform experience than what Checkmate provides feels appropriate. That being said, there's no harm in trying it out with the modifier for a weekend or two and identifying a consensus after. The one place Checkmate would fit perfectly is the competitive playlist. As Trials has transitioned away from offering a competitive grind for hardcore players, comp has taken its place as the playlist for sweaty PvPers to go and duke it out against one another. As someone who is pretty neutral on comp, I think it's fun to play here and there, but you won't catch me climbing the ladder, at least not in its current state. Implementing Checkmate as its standard rule set would be a perfect fit. This would refocus the playlist into a more gunplay-first experience, where you can still use your abilities and supers occasionally, but gun skill would be the deciding factor in the vast majority of your engagements, which is what a competitive playlist in any FPS should be based around. In addition to finding a permanent home in comp, I'd love to see Checkmate implemented as a rotating mode somewhere else in the Crucible, whether that be in Labs, the Rotator playlist, or my personal favorite idea, adding it as an extra node inside the Quick Play playlist. Similar to how solo queue used to exist for Trials and Iron Banner, two of the game's rotating game modes, for anyone who's completely lost right now. Adding a node allowing players to queue into a version of the playlist with Checkmate modifiers active would be a great way to provide that experience outside of the competitive environment. I understand concerns around splitting up the PvP player base further, and Bungie has repeatedly cited a desire to consolidate playlists to help with queue times and the like, but in this case, it would be worth a try just to see if enough players hop in to justify its presence, and if not, they can remove it and call it a day. Despite a few minor complaints, Checkmate is the best thing that's happened to PvP in the last 2 years, which isn't saying much, to be fair, but it truly is an excellent addition that's been sorely needed. I am hoping, praying, begging Bungie to continue supporting this mode moving forward, because it brings out the best of what the Crucible has to offer, and goes a long way towards righting the wrongs that dedicated PvP players have been criticizing for way too long. As someone who's gone from buying every piece of Destiny content released to only hopping into the game occasionally as a free-to-play player, things like this are exactly what I need to see for Bungie to win me back as a paying customer. Yes, PvP has been free-to-play for years, but it deserves love and attention just like the rest of the game, and it's nice to finally see some of that come to fruition after languishing on the sidelines for so long. Based on the updates we've seen already, it looks like Checkmate, and hopefully PvP overall, are trending in the right direction. As someone who still loves that side of the game, it's hard to get too excited about anything these days, but the optimist in me sees this as a sign of better times to come, and I hope Bungie can continue delivering these types of meaningful improvements moving forward. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more gaming content, and let me know your thoughts on Checkmate and the state of Destiny 2 PvP in the comments below. You're a real one and I appreciate you. Catch you later, homies.